Did Jesus' betrayer eat with him? Were the bread and wine literally his body and blood, symbolic, sacramental, or a mystery? Did the disciples all desert him? Did Jesus answer false accusations? Did he confess who he is? Do we? Let's look at Mark 14. Was there a plot by religious leaders to kill Jesus? It was now 2 days before the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to arrest him by stealth and kill him. For they said, "Not during the feast, lest there be an uproar from the people." Giving to the poor is good and important, but are there some things more important? While he was in Bethany at the house of Simon, who had a serious skin disease, as he was reclining at the table, a woman came with an alabaster jar of pure and expensive fragrant oil or nard. She broke the jar and poured it on his head. But some were expressing indignation to one another. "Why has this fragrant oil been wasted? For this oil might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor." And they began to scold her. What did Jesus teach them about the fragrant oil? But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She's done a beautiful thing for me, because you'll always have the destitute with you and can help them whenever you want. But you won't always have me. She's done what she could. She poured perfume on my body in preparation for my burial. I tell all of you with certainty, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she's done will also be told as a memorial to her." What did Judas do? Have you ever been betrayed by a close friend? And Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray him to them. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And he sought how he might conveniently betray him. Were the disciples ready to prepare for the Passover? And on the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb was being sacrificed, his disciples said to him, "Where do you want us to go and prepare for you to eat the Passover?" Was a large upper room available? Is there some mystery of faith as to how the disciples would find their way? And he sent 2 of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the city, and a man carrying a pitcher of water will meet you. Follow him, and wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher says, where's my guest room, in which I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' And he himself will show you a large upstairs room, furnished and ready. Prepare for us there." Did the disciples find things just as Jesus had told them? The disciples left, went into the city, and found things just as Jesus had told them. So they prepared the Passover. Did Jesus predict his betrayal? Were the disciples sorrowful? In the evening he came with the 12. Now as they sat and ate, Jesus said, "Assuredly I say to you, one of you who eats with me will betray me." And they began to be sorrowful, and to say to him one by one, "Is it I?" And another said, "Is it I?" He answered and said to them, "It's one of the 12 who dips with me in the dish. The Son of Man indeed goes, just as is written of him. But woe to that man, by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he'd never been born." Do we demand that the bread is literally Jesus' body, symbolic of his body, or a sacrament giving a spiritual blessing via physical means? Is Jesus' body somehow present in the bread, or do we speak humbly and simply call it a mystery? Is this like Jesus' "I am" statements? Jesus said, "I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way and the truth and the life. I am the vine." What does the word "is" mean? As they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had blessed, he broke it and gave it to them, and said, "Take, eat. This is my body." Did Jesus use the word is in a similar manner regarding the wine? He took a cup, gave thanks, and gave it to them, and they all drank from it. He said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many." Will Jesus drink wine in God's kingdom? Will we join him or claim some kind of man-made righteousness about the use of alcohol? From now on, I'll not drink any wine until I drink new wine in God's kingdom. Do we overestimate ourselves like the disciples did? Do we also fail Jesus at times? And when they'd sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, "You'll all fall away, for it's written, I'll strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I'm raised up, I'll go before you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Even though they all fall away, I will not." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows twice, you'll deny me 3 times. But he said emphatically, "If I must die with you, I'll not deny you." And they all said the same. When we make requests of God, do we also pray, "Not my will but yours," as Jesus did? Then they came to a place named Gethsemane, and he told his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and horrified. Then he said to them, "My soul is swallowed up in sorrow, to the point of death. Remain here and stay awake." Then he went a little further, fell to the ground, and began to pray that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will." When we get exhausted or overwhelmed by situations and can no longer continue, do we too realize that the spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak? When he went back, he found his disciples asleep. "Simon, are you asleep?" he asked Peter. "You couldn't stay awake for 1 hour, could you? All of you must stay awake and pray that you won't be tempted. The spirit is indeed willing, but the body is weak." Did Jesus pray the same words again? Is repetition therefore not always vain repetition? And again he went away and prayed, and spoke the same words. And when he returned, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, neither did they want to answer him. And he came the 3rd time and said to them, "Sleep on now, and take your rest. It's enough. The hour's come. Behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise up, let's go. Lo, he that betrays me is at hand." Was Jesus betrayed by a kiss? Have we ever been betrayed by a hypocritical act? And immediately while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, came up, and with him was a crowd with swords and clubs, who were from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now he who was betraying him had given them a signal, saying, "Whomever I kiss, he's the one. Seize him and lead him away under guard." And after coming, Judas, having immediately gone to him, said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. How did Jesus chide those who arrested him? And they laid hands on him and arrested him. But one of those who stood by drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to them, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me, as you would against a man inciting a revolt? Every day I was with you within the temple grounds, teaching, and you didn't arrest me. But this has taken place so that the scriptures will be fulfilled." Did everyone desert Jesus? Have we ever fled from acknowledging Jesus in conversation? Then everyone deserted him and fled. A young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. Where did they take Jesus? Who followed at a distance? And they led Jesus away to the high priest, and with him were assembled all the chief priests, the elders, and the scribes. But Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest, and he sat with the servants and warmed himself at the fire. Was this court seeking a fair trial, or one of false and self-contradictory testimony? Inside, the leading priests and the entire council were trying to find evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death, but they couldn't find any. Many false witnesses spoke against him, but they contradicted each other. Finally, some men stood up and gave this false testimony. We heard him say, "I'll destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days I'll build another made without human hands." But even then they didn't get their story straight. Did Jesus reply to the false accusations? Have we ever not replied to false accusations, but left our defense up to God? The high priest stood up in the middle and asked Jesus, "Have you no answer? What is it which these testify against you?" But he stayed quiet and answered nothing. Was there one question that Jesus did answer? Are we willing to confess Jesus? The high priest asked him another question. "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the glorious God?" "Yes, I am," Jesus answered. "Soon you'll see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God all-powerful and coming with the clouds of heaven." Was Jesus' answer received with hate? If we confess Jesus, will we too be hated by some? And the high priest tore his garments and said, "What further witness do we need? You've heard his blasphemy. What's your decision?" And they all condemned him as deserving death. And some began to spit on him, and to cover his face, and to strike him, saying to him, "Prophesy." And the guards received him with blows. Did Peter deny Jesus? Have we ever denied Jesus? While Peter was in the courtyard below, one of the high priest's servants came. When she saw Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said, "You also were with that Nazarene Jesus." But he denied it. "I don't know or understand what you're talking about." Then he went out to the entryway, and a rooster crowed. When the servant saw him again, she began to tell those standing nearby, "This man's one of them." But again he denied it. After a little while, those standing there said to Peter again, "You certainly are one of them, since you're also a Galilean." Then he started to curse and to swear with an oath, "I don't know this man you're talking about." Immediately a rooster crowed a second time, and Peter remembered when Jesus had spoken the words to him, "Before the rooster crows twice, you'll deny me 3 times." When he thought about it, he began to weep. Did Jesus' betrayer eat with him? Were the bread and wine literally his body and blood, symbolic, sacramental, or a mystery? Did the disciples all desert him? Did Jesus answer false accusations? Did he confess who he is? Do we? You decide.